Hello. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Brother Sean and I'm a member of the Teo community of Interfaith Franciscans. This is a heart reflection about a soul therapy. Yes, a therapy given to us by Miriam Magdalene, the Divine Feminine. And I remember as far back as 1999, when my heart at that time was somewhat crushed because of brokenness, having developed a rather unpleasant side effect to Prozac that I was prescribed to help me deal with death and dying issues of a dear brother monk and friend of 28 years who at 42 died of cancer. Whilst I was pleased that suffering was no longer and that my dear friend was at peace, but I guess I was being selfish because I was mourning for myself. Because when we met up together 4 times a year, we were just like 2 schoolboys. And having had that friendship for so many years, it was as if I'd had a stroke, because all down one side there was a loss. And in my heart, I found it really difficult to cope as a senior nurse specialist in palliative care. But at that time, I didn't really know a lot about Mary Magdalene other than what the church taught me. But as a young nursing monk, I could never accept the church's teaching or endorse those teachings that she was a prostitute. I could never accept it. I don't know why that was, but now I realize that Mary Magdalene was the beloved of Christ. The 2 of them, they were twin flames. And I know from what my heart has guided me to believe, there's no anecdotal evidence in the Catholic Church that Magdalene was the beloved of Jesus, that they had a child together, because that is just total heresy. But they grew up together in Egypt, around the Sinai Peninsula, by the home base of a spiritual family, the Therapeutaeans. And Magdalene was a high priestess of Isis, a very spiritual being in her own right. And I know that she recognized in the Christ, Jesus the barefoot Galilean, someone very special. And though she came from the tribe of Benjamin, she was schooled in esoteric Essenic energy medicine. She had been trained wisely by the monks who lived by Lake Mareotis and by Mount Sinai. And I remember then in 1999, whilst I was just coming off long-term incapacity, where I'd been sick for 4 years, trying to cope with the stresses of life, and I'd become somewhat agoraphobic through to the Prozac. But I sensed this woman speaking to my heart. And I was also aware that at 3 a.m. every morning I would be awakened by the angelic realm, especially Archangel Metatron. And I could discern Jesus' voice saying to me, "We would like to work with you. We will lead those whom we have chosen to come to you, and you will introduce them to Magdalene's therapy, using the spikenard on the feet and the hands to bring in the Christ light into the soul, to anoint the divine within each child of God." I felt it was a bit too much for me. I was overwhelmed by it. At that time I was a Reiki master, but I always sensed that something was missing. I wasn't sure then what it was, but now I realize it was the feminine energies of Magdalene. And I remember helping a friend do a mind, body, spirit event, and this young woman came up and she seemed distraught, and I guess the nursing instinct never dies, and I just said to her, "Are you okay?" And she started crying, and I sat her down on a chair, and I just, as I would have done with anybody placed my left hand on her back and held her hand, and she said, "There's a powerful heat coming from you." I said, "Is there? It's probably because I'm warm." "No," she said, "I just sense a real peace coming from you." I sensed the presence of Magdalene and Jesus. I went, "Really?" And this beautiful woman was a Reiki master and teacher. And she said, "I am feeling so much more comforted, as if a great weight has been taken from me." So I gave her my card. I said, "Do let me know how you get on," routinely, because I really struck up a wonderful friendship with this beautiful light worker. 2 weeks later the phone rang, and it was her, and she said, "I want to bring my 5 friends to experience what I experienced." And I was perplexed. I said, "Bring them along." I said, "But what I do is what I've done all my life. As a nursing monk, when patients were dying and they couldn't sleep, when morphine and the opiates couldn't relieve the pain, I would get a bottle of the Aracus oil enema from the drug cupboard, and I would just get a towel, place it under their feet, and I would just gently massage their feet with the oil, and I would just pray with them. And suddenly I found the patients would be asleep, and not long afterwards they would cross over. But looking back, you realize that even as a young nursing monk in my late teens, early 20s, God was using these humble hands to touch lives. And at that time I never felt good enough or worthy enough as a nursing monk. And now, when I look back over the last 12 years of my self-employment as a teacher working in divine service to God, to the Christ and Magdalene, I have seen them touch so many lives. The beautiful men and women they've led here for me to work with, to empower their heart, become reawakened to the I Am presence within them, and to show them how they too can practice the therapy on clients, incorporating it if they wished with their Reiki, the Teramai or Sikhem. So they came on, my courses then were residential. They lasted 6 months with blocks in between, but now I've been guided to cease all that and just work with clients individually and personalize the soul therapy called therapeutic channeling, incorporating the divine diaphragmatic energy of the divine masculine and the divine feminine, rooted in the 8,000-year-old Essenic teachings given by the Prophet Enoch. It is a powerful therapy. I've had clients here who've had no face, were very anti everything, where they had spent a fortune. And when I say a fortune, I'm not talking of 3 digits, I'm talking of 5 and 6 digits, traveling the world to see the experts. They could afford it. But they were guided to come to me. Why me? I've no idea. And you could feel the resentment at first. It's not going to work. And I said, but I'm not here to win success. But I work with an incredible boss. And he said, well, who is he? I said, it's Jesus, the barefoot Galilean, and Miriam Magdalene. Really? And you know, I said, what's so interesting? Whatever I ask in their name, they honor that and they do it. But I never have proof, nor do I need it. Because I know in here that when Jesus shared with us, whatever you ask in my name, I will do it for you. Not I might do it for you, depending on whether you go to church or not. None of that. And 6 months later, after this particular man who'd done the rounds around the world, from Australia to Singapore to Hong Kong to Malaysia to, I think, Timbuktu, his wife told him to ring me, and he said, "Do you know that session I had where you anointed my feet with those funny smelling oils, the spikenard, and where you left me just resting in this wonderful peace?" He said, "I've never looked back. I've never looked back, and I just want to say thank you." But the therapists who were guided here by Miriam Magdalene were all wounded soldiers in divine service, nearly always nurses who had gone on to develop holistic therapy in the alternative field. Quite a few of them had been sexually abused as children, and there was a lot of deep-rooted trauma where they were involved in this mind game, pretense. "How are you feeling today?" "Oh, I'm fine." But the Archangel Metatron always told me when they were fine or not. So during the course, they were introduced to me anointing their feet. And that's when the tissues were needed. All of a sudden, a wave would come over them and they would release. By golly gosh, would they release. It was an amazing sight. One beautiful woman who was a nurse had never cried for several years since her husband abandoned her. And she wept. And it was quite disturbing at first. But the natural thing to do is to put your arm around someone. With Ascenic energy medicine, where the divine feminine Magdalene is releasing to prepare one for the coming, the influx of the Christ light into your soul, you're not allowed to touch the person. Because the moment you touch them, you block them from releasing. So I would always say, please don't. Allow them grieve, allow them cry. And some people took their bat home with me saying, "Well, who do you think you are?" It was protecting the client, but respecting the energy. A lot of people who do holistic work today, some are quite naive about the impact of energy. Now, you wouldn't stick your fingers in a live socket, would you? No. But there are therapists who do. They don't listen to their heart. They do not meditate. They don't spend time in prayer. They see the work as a money-making scheme. I believe if you're truly, truly intent on working with the divine and the angelic realm, you automatically are a person of prayer, discipline, and penance, where you fast, and where you also take care of yourself, and at all times be mindful of the psychic vampires and rescuing. So this soul therapy I'm talking about is therapeutic channeling. It's an amazing therapy that the Essenes practiced on each other in Egypt, in Mount Sinai. And that was passed on to Magdalene, and she gave us a demonstration of it when she anointed the feet of the Christ. But first she washed his feet with her tears and dried them with her long trestles of hair. And then she used this very expensive ointment called spikenard. And I do have a very expensive oil of spikenard from Jerusalem. It's not synthetic, it's not diluted, it's straight from the plant. It was very expensive. But when you apply that and you show the students who are on the course how to make the oil, it takes 3 days of prayer and fasting. Yeah. So the oils that I sell online takes 3 days of prayer and fasting. Great preparation goes into balancing the energies and then stepping back to allow the Christ and Magdalene infuse the oils with their love. And so many have testified on what the oils have done to them, even when they take the top off the bottle. the room becomes saturated with the divine masculine feminine energy. So the soul therapy is available for you, but you'd have to come to me because I don't travel anymore. Or I can train you on a one-to-one on the course, the Diaphragmatic Diploma course in Ascenic Energy Medicine, using Skype and online tutorials. It is a powerful therapy, and in the early days the students and clients used to say, "I've no words." I said, "I know that it was effective when you can't explain to me how it's touched you." And then one client said to me 5 years ago, she said, "I have had nearly every therapy going, but this for me was profound." I said, "Why is that?" Because she said it was a soul therapy. It gets right into the heart and it empowers you. Self-heal. Because unless the physician heals themselves, then all we're giving our clients is our baggage. How many people do you know who do therapies and who are in a place of crises, unhappy, miserable? I know quite a few. And I used to say to them, "Don't you think it's wise to step back and take time out to self-heal?" "Oh no, I need money for my mortgage. My clients help me pay my electricity bill and put food on the table." But I said, "But what you're doing is you're denying your client the energy that they've paid for. You're getting the energy and they're getting nothing. All they're getting is your negativity." And they look at you with horror in their face. But think about it. If the therapist is not in a good place, then the energies that we are given through us to the client, they're diluted, aren't they? Well, I think they are. So I hope my sharing with you about this soul therapy, Magdalene's therapy, but it's not new. It's as ancient as the hills. It goes back 8,000 years. And there are quite a few therapists now around the world that Magdalene led to me to work with them, who now practice therapeutic touch, channeling, incorporating their own therapies and changing lives. And then people have this love affair with Magdalene because they see her, they hear her, they're aware of her, and all they want to do is work with her to raise the vibrations, and balance the male energies that are so prevalent in religion, and bring back the balance of the masculine and the feminine. Thank you for watching. Namaste.